RFK Racing is expected to expand to a 3-car operation in 2025, with Preece being the driver, and Norris has shockingly departed Trackhouse Racing and is expected to join Colleague Racing in 2025. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports to discuss today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them straight those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just show them straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s 2024 Kroger Dasani scheme that we'll see this weekend at Bristol. Scheme's okay in my opinion. I think JTG Doherty's had some good paint schemes in the past, and they've had some bad paint schemes. This one's okay. Hopefully Stenhouse still can have a good run with this scheme this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Preece's 2024 Old Armor beer scheme that we'll see this weekend at Bristol. I like the colors a lot. I think the scheme looks pretty solid. SHR did a pretty good job on this one, and I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Bristol. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chris Rebel's 2024 DeWalt St. Jude scheme that we'll see this weekend at Bristol. Not much has changed other than adding St. Jude's to the car. I think it looks solid though. They did a pretty good job. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Bristol. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Hemrick's 2024 Doritos Mountain Dew scheme that we'll see this weekend at Bristol. A really awesome combination. PepsiCo is back for their one-off run this year. This car looks really great. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Bristol. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Sam Mayer's 2024 QPS scheme that we'll see in a couple races in 2024. Scheme's alright in my opinion. It's cool to see QPS back. Of course, QPS is owned by Sam Mayer's father, Scott. It looks okay in my opinion. Hope he can have a good run in the scheme in the next few races that it runs. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Weatherman's 2024 Craven scheme that we'll see this weekend at Bristol and next weekend at Kansas. I like the colors a lot. DGM knocked this one out of the park. It does look pretty good. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Bristol. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Spencer Boyd's 2024 Michael Waltrip Brewing scheme that we'll see tomorrow night at Bristol. I like this a lot. I think that they've had some good schemes over at Freedom Racing Enterprises and some not so great schemes, but this one looks pretty solid. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack on Thursday at Bristol. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Noah Grayson's 2024 Bass Pro Winchester scheme that we'll see on Saturday night at Bristol. I like this a lot. It's an updated look to the Bass Pro Winchester scheme. I think they knocked this one out of the park. I think SHR did an amazing job, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Bristol. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Anthony Alfredo's 2024 Dude Wipe scheme that we'll see on Friday. I like this scheme. It looks pretty good. I think that they did a good job on this one, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway. It looks pretty solid, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Darlington Raceway, as the 75th anniversary logo has been officially revealed. Next year in 2025 will be the 75th anniversary of Darlington Raceway, a track with a lot of history, of course many Southern 500 legendary moments, and many legendary and great moments at the racetrack. I think this logo looks really good. It looks pretty simplistic, but it is really nice looking. It does look pretty good, and I'm definitely looking forward to see this logo when we do officially head over to the racetrack next year. It does look like a pretty good logo, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tyler Tomasi. As it was announced earlier today that Tyler Tomasi will drive the 46 for Young's Motorsports tomorrow night at Bristol Motor Speedway. Tyler Tomasi has made select truck starts over the last couple of years. He's going to have a really good chance and opportunity to see what he can do. Now, originally, Thad Moffitt was supposed to be on the wheel of the 46 truck for many races this year, but unfortunately, it sounds like he might have departed the team. We're not sure at this point. I expect Tyler to maybe struggle a little bit, but I think this could be a really solid opportunity for Tyler. I hope he can make the field. There's a couple of trucks that will go home, and the 46 truck's kind of on the borderline at the moment. We'll see if Tyler can be able to go out there and make the field this weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Logan Bearden. As it was announced earlier today that Logan Bearden will drive the 15 for AM Racing this weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway. Logan Bearden has been working with AM Racing over the course of the last few years, has made select truck series starts at AM Racing in the number 37 truck, and I do believe this is going to be his first start with that organization this season. Logan is a pretty talented race car driver. I go back to Richmond earlier this year where he got the best out of that equipment in the 14 car for SS Greenlight Racing. And while this car has struggled with drivers like Haley Deegan and Joey Logano, this car barely made the field even though Logano did get a top 10. I do think Logan could get the best out of equipment. He's going to be kind of borderline on making the race on points, but I do think if anybody's got a chance and opportunity to make the field, I think it's Logan. I think there's a really solid opportunity and looking forward to see what he can do with AM Racing this weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Xfinity races. Now, it was reported by Bob Pockrass earlier today that there will be no streaming for the remainder of the 2024 season for the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Now, the streaming app will start coming into play for CW starting in 2025. So, unfortunately for those who've been paying attention, the last 8 NASCAR Xfinity Series races will be on the CW. So, if you're planning to tune into the Xfinity Series races going forward, you're either going to have an antenna, which really isn't going to cost you a ton of money, and basically it's free on air, or you're going to have to get a cable subscription service or get something like YouTube TV, which you can record the races, by the way, and watch them later. Make sure you have it up, because I think with it being on national television, I think the ratings will be up for it. I know it's disappointing and it sucks to see that they're kind of doing it this way. I do wish they were still maybe doing it on the NBC Sports app. The Cup Series will still have this going forward, and some of the qualifying sessions will still be on USA. In fact, on Friday, they will have the qualifying session on USA, so that's good there. But it is a little disappointing nonetheless to see this move, but I'm not shocked and surprised by this move, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Stephan Parsons. As it was announced earlier today that Stephan Parsons will drive the 45 for Alpha Prime Racing this weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway. The last time Stephan Parsons, I believe, drove for Alpha Prime was back in 2022, and I remember the time he raced at Bristol where he finished in 8th place, which is very, very impressive. Stephan Parsons is a driver, in my opinion, that can absolutely get the best out of equipment. And I do expect that Stephan is going to have a solid chance and opportunity to be very, very competitive. Alpha Prime Racing shown a lot more pace and speed throughout the year, and I do think Stephan will do a pretty good job. I would not be surprised or shocked if Stephan gets top 20s in both the Truck Series race tomorrow night and the Xfinity Series race on Friday. I think he's going to be very competitive. I think he's certainly going to be very, very solid. I'm looking forward to see what Stephan can do. I think he's going to do a really good job for sure with Alpha Prime Racing this weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Bayy Curry. As it was announced on Monday that Bayy Curry will drive the 44 for Nice Motorsports on Thursday at Bristol Motor Speedway. This is definitely a very shocking move. Remember, Bayy Curry was supposed to drive the 41 truck for the whole entire season. Now, Bayy is expected to get back behind the wheel of the 41 truck after this week at Bristol. Basically, same sponsor that Bayley's had so far this year. I do believe we're still going to be working with him when he drives the 44 truck, but this is a little disappointing considering the fact that I don't think they're transitioning to points either. So this truck does have to qualify its way in, which is a shame because I feel like Bayy Curry, he's had some good runs this year. There's no denying that, but I feel like he's also been a little bit disappointing so far this year. But I do think he can definitely turn the corner for sure. I'm disappointed to see they're making this move, in all honesty. We'll talk about why they're making this move in just a second, which I kind of disagree with, by the way. But I do think that Bayley's a good driver. I think things need to turn around over there. I hope Bayy can do a really good job in the 44 for Nice Motorsports tomorrow night at Bristol Motor Speedway with the 44 team. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Conor Mosca. As it was announced on Monday that Conor Mosca will drive the 41 for Nice Motorsports this weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway. Going back, this was Ben Bayy Curry's truck the whole entire season. Now, Conor Mosca is bringing sponsorship and funding, but if I remember correctly, he was supposed to be driving the 45 truck and also driving for Spire Motorsports part-time. So I really don't know what changed in recent weeks. I'm going to be real and honest. Conor Mosca, he's a pretty solid road course racer. Outside of that, though, he's kind of struggled on ovals. I know he's won at Kansas and ARCA, but ARCA is a very uncompetitive field. And I do think Conor does have a little bit of talent, especially when it comes to road course racing, but he's not a driver that's going to come in here and set the world on fire. So I'm definitely a little shocked by this move. I feel like keeping him in the 45 truck makes a lot of sense. Granted, though, the driver they're getting behind the wheel of the 45, that being Caden Honeycutt, that's a better driver in all honesty. Maybe he could have put Conor Mosca in the 44. I get why they're doing it because of sponsorship on other things, but at the same time, it's also a little bit questionable considering the fact that I do feel like that Conor Mosca hasn't earned the opportunity. I know he signed part-time with Nice for this year, but I do feel like that Conor Mosca should be in the 45 truck or the 44 truck instead of the 41 because Bayley's been in this truck the whole entire year. I question this move a little bit, to be honest, and I'm a little surprised to see they're making this move, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Colton Hera. As it was reported by the Race.com that Colton Hera, with him finishing second in the IndyCar Championship for 2024, he has secured enough points to secure a super license to go to Formula One. There's been a lot of conversation surrounding the possibility of Colton Hera going to Formula One for the last couple of years. I go back to 2022 when there was a lot of talk about him joining the Red Bull Academy and making some starts in Formula One with the Helmut Marko won him over there and driving for AlphaTauri before they came Visa Cash App Red Bull for 2024. Now, Colton Hera at the time was unfortunately denied because he did not have enough super license points. Now, obviously, I've been majorly against super license points in Formula One. I feel like if you're good enough to go to Formula One, you should be able to go to Formula One. There is no reason they should have to have an arbitrary number of points to make it into Formula One. The reason they created that super license system in the first place was to prevent drivers like 16 years old or 17 getting to Formula One like Max Verstappen. The problem is you've got 18-year-old kids who haven't done great in Formula 2 moving up to Formula 1 next year. And don't get me wrong, Kimi Antonelli, he's very talented, but everyone's kind of saying he's the next big thing based off of one practice session where he crashed out. I feel like if you give him more chance and opportunities, he'll probably do better. But I also do question this move a little bit to put him full-time with Mercedes. But also, Toto Wolff said he wanted him behind the wheel for a while, which is definitely really interesting. I really hope Cole in the future gets to go to Formula One. The biggest thing is if Andretti can eventually get approved to Formula One, which I think is going to be really tough considering the fact that Andretti's been denied to go into Formula One for a while now. I really hope that changes going forward, but I'm not exactly sure if that's going to change. But I do hope in the near future that he can find a way to get him into Formula One, because I think Colton should be in Formula One over some of the drivers that are clearly in Formula One. I really hope it changes so he can get that chance and opportunity, maybe in the not so distant future, to get into Formula One. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Felix Rosenqvist. As it was originally reported on the NBC broadcast for IndyCar, for the final broadcast on IndyCar, that Felix Rosenqvist, and it was confirmed yesterday, that Felix Rosenqvist has signed a multi-year contract extension with Meyer-Shank Racing. It's beyond 2025, originally was through the 2026 season, but I do think it's going to go even farther than that. Now, Felix Rosenqvist deserves his chance and opportunity. He's had a solid year in IndyCar so far, finished 12th in the standings, but I remember how strong he was at the start of the year. He just has had a lot of bad luck and bad breaks throughout the year, which cost him a shot at finishing in the top 10 in the standings. I think Felix has really found his home in Meyer-Shank and has really rejuvenated that program over there in the number 60 car. He took over for Helio Castroneves for the most part, even though Haley is working as one of the owners of the team, and I think Felix has done a really great job over there, taking over for Jack Harvey as well. And when you compare Felix to Jack Harvey, there's really no comparison in performance. I think Felix has deserved his contract extension with the team, and I think he's going to do a great job. I think that, especially since Chip Ganassi Racing, which, by the way, Felix drove for Chip Ganassi in 2019 and I believe 2020 as well, I do think that Felix is going to do a great job over there, especially with Ganassi helping them going into next year. I expect Felix to be competitive. Now, we do not know who's behind the wheel of the 66 car just yet. There have been rumors about Linus Lundqvist or Marcus Armstrong getting the seat for next year, but we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens. Nonetheless, it's a well-deserved contract extension for Felix. I think he's earned the right and opportunity to get behind the wheel of this team once again for the 2025 IndyCar season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Toyota, as it was officially confirmed earlier today that Toyota will be joining Supercars in 2026. The Toyota Supra is going to be joining with the Waukesha Andretti United team. Andretti, of course, does have a team in Supercars, and there have been rumors, speculation, it was originally reported, I believe, by Speed Cafe that this likely was going to happen, and a formal partnership has been announced. This is just like NASCAR. You've got now a Chevrolet organization, you have Ford, and now you've got Toyota joining for the first time in a very long time. I think Volvo had been part of it, if I'm not mistaken. and having a chance and opportunity to bring a group in like that is absolutely huge. And I think it's pretty cool to see that this is going to be happening where Toyota is officially going to be joining Formula One Supercars for the 2026 season. It just continues to grow, and I know some are now going to say, hey, this is where Spire is going to switch over because there's been rumors about Andretti going to Spire, but obviously Andretti in the supercar scene is a lot different than the other brands that they have. They basically have multiple brands and partnerships among other things. Of course, Andretti's got Cadillac and IMSA going into next year with Wayne Taylor Racing. They're still going to be staying, of course, with Honda for the 2025 season, but there's a lot of speculation that Andretti in 2026 could switch to Cadillac or Chevrolet, and that's how I think they're going to find a way over to Spire Motorsports for the 2026 season. Still, this is a huge and massive deal for Supercars nonetheless to be working with one of the most powerful groups over there at Andretti as they continue to expand their global presence. I think this is huge for the sport and really awesome, fantastic to see that Toyota is officially joining Supercars for 2026. They've been interested in going back to IndyCar. They've been interested in going back to Formula One, but they will be going to Supercars for sure for 2026. Really exciting and awesome stuff. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Callum Isot. As it was officially confirmed early this morning that Callum Isot has been officially announced as the first driver of two drivers for Prema in IndyCar for 2025. Remember, Prema will be joining IndyCar for the 2025 season. The numbers they're going to be using is the number 83 and the number 90. Now, I don't think they confirmed today which number that Callum Isot is going to be driving, but Callum has been linked to the Prema group for the last month or so and was likely going to be one of the drivers. Callum has been really solid in IndyCar over the last couple of years. He was really good with Juncos Hollinger Racing, had some great runs with that team. He got a chance and opportunity to join Aaron McLaren on a part-time basis this year, ran the Indy 500 and was pretty solid there in that race. And in the select other race he ran for Aaron McLaren, he did a pretty good job. Prema is also rumored to be picking up one of the charters, as IndyCar will have a charter system most likely announced by the start of next year, though it still has not been announced at this point. But I think Callum getting a chance to go full-time in IndyCar once again is very, very huge. He's been in the World Endurance Championship the last couple of years. He was with Jota, which will be switching over to Cadillac for 2025 in the World Endurance Championship. So I think bringing him in the Prema group is a no-brainer. Now, we do not know it yet who is going to be the driver, but the rumored driver is Robert Schwartzman. There was talk about Logan Sargent and Alexander Rossi being two of the other candidates to get behind the wheel, but everyone believes at this point that it's going to be Robert Schwartzman, who's been in the Formula One group and moving up to the Formula One ladder. He's probably coming over to IndyCar for 2025. But I think Callum is a really good driver. He's earned his right and opportunity, and I certainly do expect that Callum Isot is going to make the best of it and do a really solid job with Prema for 2025. A great opportunity, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Conor Zilich. As it was reported by Bob Pockers that Conor Zilich will be driving the 7 truck for Spire Motorsports tomorrow night at Bristol Motor Speedway. He'll also be doing double duty because he will be driving a number 28 car for Pinnacle Racing Group in the ARCA race as well. Conor Zilich has made 2 truck starts so far in 2024. He ran a Circuit Americas where he won the pole by being the fastest qualifier by nearly a second over the rest of the competition, and unfortunately messed it up and still recovered to finish in 4th place after breaking certain parts on the car or truck and was able to recover and finish inside the top 5. Then his second start was at Richmond where he was running inside the top 10 before unfortunately running out of really good tires and got dumped and taken out at the end of the race. Conor Zilich is of course coming off of winning the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Watkins Glen this past week, and he's probably the most hyped up prospect currently at the moment, justifiably so. I think Conor's done a really good job, and I certainly do think, especially with him having experience in the ARCA race, I think is going to be very competitive and super, super fast and very, very quick. I do expect him to be a threat to win. The 7 truck has been competitive. Kyle Busch almost won this truck earlier this year. He nearly beat Christian Eckes. Of course, I do expect drivers like Christian Eckes, Ty Majeski, and Corey Hammond to be up there, and maybe even guys like Tyler Anker, Mirage Crew going out there and competing for the win. But I do certainly expect that he's going to be very solid and very competitive. And I think that we could see Conor Zilich surprise and maybe win his first ever Truck Series race. That would be huge for him. I do think he's going to have a shot and opportunity. Spire's been pretty fast so far this year, and they've been really good at shorter ovals, including at tracks like Bristol. I think is a really solid chance and a really great opportunity for Conor Zilich for this weekend at Bristol Motor Speedway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tyler Reddick. Now, Tyler Reddick earlier today was on SiriusXM NASCAR radio discussing about this past weekend at Watkins Glen. And he kind of talked about the driver code and the racing etiquette on the racetrack at the ends of this race. He kind of echoed a lot of the comments that Mark Truex he says. He basically says that the racing etiquette and the driver code in NASCAR is gone. It's no longer there anymore. He did say that he's made his own share of mistakes on the racetrack, but he says in general, especially at the end of these races, it has been turning into chaos and a lot of craziness. Tyler Reddick is absolutely right. The ends of these races, especially on road courses, and not just road courses, but end of the Cup Series races in general, have been turning into wildfires and complete dumpster fires. We have had 12 races so far this year out of 28 NASCAR Cup Series races have had overtime so far this year. That is a record for the NASCAR Cup Series, and that is absolutely insane. And I do expect that number to continue to grow as these races always end in overtime. And we get to the end of these races, the drivers lose their brains. Look at the end of Richmond. A pretty clean, calm race. Austin Dillon was cruising to victory. Then you got Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Ryan Preece that wreck each other. And then you have the end of the race where Austin Dillon completely dumps Joey Logano in the corner and right rears Denny Hamlin down the straightaway. We all saw this at Watkins Glen. Drivers are running all over the place and running into each other, dumping each other. And the next-gen car is also a big problem for this as well, because the next-gen car does remote this kind of stuff. It causes all this chaos because this car is almost indestructible, except in the tow link. When you have a car that's indestructible and can basically take hits like the other cars can't, it really does create this problem where the drivers feel like they're completely invisible. And that's when the racing can get really bad and can be way over chaotic and way too complicated. And I really hope this changes going forward. I don't know if maybe getting rid of overtime or going back to single file restarts to be the thing at the end of these races. That could be something that NASCAR could do at the end. I don't have a problem with double file restarts, but if there's a way on these road courses to find a way to kind of stop all the chaos that's been going on, I think it's going to be better for everybody overall. So I really hope this does happen where it changes, but personally, I don't know if it's going to change. The drivers have been accustomed to this for a long time. You have the playoffs where it's like, you got to go win, you got to go win, you got to do this for your team. And unfortunately, it creates all this chaos that desperately does not need to be there. It needs to change going forward because some of these younger drivers especially are looking up to some of these guys, and they don't like that. We all saw how great the finish was. It was a fantastic finish between SVG and Chris Buescher. They didn't wreck each other for the win. They raced hard, but very, very fair. And Chris Buescher is a guy that wants to be raced with respect. And if you race guys with respect, they'll give you the respect back. I feel like it needs to be fixed going forward. I'm just worried it's not going to get fixed, and I don't think anything is going to change going forward. I think all the chaos that we've been seeing is going to continue, which is disappointing, but I'm not really shocked or surprised it is probably going to continue going forward, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Daniel Ricciardo. As there was reported by Joseph Strigley of TobyChristie.com that Daniel Ricciardo is actually interested in racing in NASCAR. He stated that he'd like to give a try and maybe running in NASCAR after his Formula One career is officially over, and he said he'd like to maybe run in the Daytona 500 as early as 2025 or 2026. Now, Daniel Ricciardo currently competes in Formula One at the moment, but it's very unlikely that he'll be back in Formula One in 2025, as it's heavily rumored that Liam Lawson is going to be joining VCARB for the 2025 season. And let's be real and honest, I think Daniel Ricciardo is completely past his prime. He is nearly 40 years old. He'll be 38 in 2025, and he'll be getting a lot older. While you have Liam Lawson, I think has a lot of potential and certainly deserves to be in Formula One, in my opinion. Now, this is not the first time that Daniel Ricciardo has been interested in going to NASCAR. I remember a few years ago when he was looking for a ride when he didn't have an F1 ride before getting signed with Red Bull, he has shared a little bit of interest in doing some road course racing for NASCAR, and he is a big fan of Dale Jr. and the Earnhardt family as well. Remember, he actually drove the number 3 car that Dale Sr. drove back in the 1980s at Circuit Americas during the USGP, I believe back in 2021 or 2020. I think it'd be really awesome to see Daniel Ricciardo get a chance and opportunity. Now, what team could he drive for? Maybe Project 91 and Trackhouse Racing? We know Trackhouse is very interested in bringing Project 91 back. We know Ricciardo's not the only driver interested in joining. Paddle Ward is also interested in getting behind the wheel of a NASCAR Cup Series car. And we know that Zach Brown's interested in maybe letting his guys go over there. And Daniel Ricciardo working with Trackhouse, which obviously they do have affiliation. They do, because Trackhouse is kind of working with Junior Motorsports going into the 2025 season for next year. If Conor going over and working with the 88 in JRM, maybe this is the way he gets there. Or maybe he goes over and races for Junior Motorsports in an all-star car. That could be very interesting for sure. But I would absolutely love to see more of this crossover where drivers from Formula One can't come over and race in NASCAR, because motorsports crossover overall is really good for everybody. It's kind of like Kyle Larson running the Indy 500. Kyle Larson running the Indy 500 is really good for IndyCar. It will grow the sport there. And having this motorsports crossover like it was back in the day, which we've been kind of seeing that happen in recent years, to me, is absolutely huge. And I really hope this does continue going forward, because I want to see this motorsports crossover continue. I really hope we do get to see this happen, where we do get to see Mr. Daniel Ricciardo come over and race in NASCAR. I think it'd be really fun. And again, it'd be really exciting for NASCAR as a whole. I think likely it will be with Project 91 if it does end up happening, if he wants to be in the Cup Series, but it could be with another organization going forward, and we'll see what happens in regards to that and see if Daniel Ricciardo does eventually come over the NASCAR potentially in the early 2025 or even the 2026 season. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Conor Zilich once again. Now, Conor Zilich was basically on one of the shows that Daniel Trotta and Larry McReynolds do basically every single day. And he kind of talked about a development in regards to his future with Trackhouse Racing. He says there is no timeline mapped out at Trackhouse Racing for his future. And he also said there is no rush to get up to the NASCAR Cup Series. He really doesn't have a timetable going forward for the future. Now, keep in mind, Conor Zilich just turned 18 years old, but he's been very impressive. He's won 5 ARCA races in 6 attempts so far this year, including winning that dominant race at Watkins Glen. He has won multiple Cars Tour races over the course of the last couple years. He's also been very competitive in the Truck Series in the select races that he's ran so far, and also, of course, has won in the LMP2 class, in the Rolls 24, and also in the Sebring 12 Hours as well. Now, a lot of people like myself seeing a lot of people saying he should try to go out there and place Alex Bowman in 2026, which I don't think is going to happen. I think he won't be leaving Trackhouse Racing. But there's also this talk conversation, right, about him maybe going Cup Racing in 2026. Why? Well, because Daniel Suarez only signed a 1-year extension with Trackhouse Racing. Now, to be fair to Daniel Suarez, his performance so far in the playoffs has probably been good enough that he can even stay around for 2026 as well. I think Suarez has been doing a really good job. But I think if Suarez struggles more, we could see Conor Zilich get up there. He is going to run really well in Xfinity Series next year, in my opinion. I expect Conor Zilich to be a major factor, a major threat, and a major contender for the championship next year. I think he for sure is going to win on road course, and now his biggest challenge is definitely going to be the ovals. But if he does as well on ovals in the Xfinity Series as he's done in ARCA, I think he will have a shot and opportunity to go Cup Series racing. And I would also not be surprised or shocked if you see him make his NASCAR Cup Series debut either at the end of this season with the Project 91 car, if they bring that back for this year, or next season. I think that you're going to see him make his Cup Series debut in the future. He has got a lot of potential. I think that he is the best prospect out there. There's no disrespect drivers like Corey Hyde or Christian Eckes or guys like Lane Riggs or Haley Deegan or someone like that. I do think that he is the best prospect we've seen since probably Kyle Larson coming up, and probably even since Kyle Busch and Joey Logano. I think Conor is a really great talent. He's done a fantastic job in the lower series so far, and I do expect him to only continue to get better. I think he's going to get better as time goes on. He's very young. I think that transition is going to continue, and I think he'll continue to improve as a race car driver going into the future, in my honest opinion. I think he's a really great driver, and he's a really great talent, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Corey Day. As it was officially announced yesterday that Corey Day will be officially joining McAnally Hilgeman Racing for a select number of races in 2024. He'll drive the number 81 truck this week at Bristol Motor Speedway tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow evening, and will also race the 81 truck at Martinsville as well. He'll also get behind the wheel of the number 91 truck at Kansas Speedway next weekend, and then he'll race the 91 truck at Homestead in October. Corey Day, for those who do not know, is a sprint car phenom. He's been very dominant in the Sprint Car Series and the High Limit Series, won a lot of races there, and also has picked up a couple wins in the World of Outlaws as well. But of course, of how much Hendrick really likes him and him being part of the Hendrick family, considering HendrickCars.com will be sponsoring his trucks for those select races and also in the ARCA race that he's running later tomorrow night as well in the number 82 car, I think that he could end up in Hendrick Motorsports in the near future. We have seen a lot of drivers praise this guy, including Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson spoke to Kenny Wallace not too long ago and said that Corey Day is the next big thing. He even said that Corey Day is better than what Kyle Larson was at his own age. Even Kyle Larson said that. And I think Corey Day has a lot of potential. Now, he did make his asphalt debut in the late model series with Dale Jr. and won a feature race, I believe, at Florence Speedway earlier this year. He also made his ARCA debut earlier this year at St. Louis Speedway during the NASCAR break for the Olympics and was running in second position before, unfortunately, making a mistake. He wasn't going to beat William Swatch anyways, but he made a mistake and crashed. But he was very impressive that night before the wrecks and incident. I expect Corey Day to run very solidly these next few weeks. I don't expect him to go out there and win by any stretch of imagination, but I do think he's going to do better in driver like Jack Wood, and I do think he'll get a couple top 10s. I think realistically in his debut, he'll probably finish inside the top 15. Yes, the Truck Series is not insanely competitive because you got guys, but you still got a lot of competition. You've got guys like Christian Eckes and Tyler Ankrum and Ty Majeski and Conor Zilich and Corey Heim. And other guys like Roger Kroof and Lane Riggs, who just picked up a win a few weeks ago. You've got a very competitive Truck Series field that is only going to get more and more competitive as time progresses and goes on. And I think that he is going to do a very excellent job. And I think he could also make some select Xfinity Series starts in the future for Hendrick Motorsports. Also, maybe Roger Kroof could maybe in the future as well. There's been talk about him maybe making a transition up to Cup, or not Cup, Xfinity full-time for 2025. Most likely he's staying in the Truck Series next year. I think he's a very good driver in my opinion. And I think having both Conor and Corey working together next year or this week is going to be really fun to watch, see which driver is better. It's going to be fun to watch two of the best young prospects currently in NASCAR at the moment, and I cannot wait to see how both those drivers do and how Corey Day will end up doing this week or tomorrow night at Bristol Motor Speedway. Really excited to see what he can do at Bristol tomorrow night, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR silly season once again. Now, it was reported by Bob Pockrass earlier today that he did an updated look at his predictions and what he believes is going to happen with the remainder of the 2025 NASCAR silly season and some of the remaining rides that have not been announced for 2025 currently at the moment. Let's begin by talking about Hendrick Motorsports. Kyle Larson is, of course, set through the 2026 season. William Byron is set through 2025, though most likely he'll sign a multi-year extension in the future. And Chase Elliott is signed through 2027. Now, while there was a little talk early in the silly season about Alex Bowman losing his ride with Hendrick Motorsports to go into Spire, Alex Bowman was confirmed by Rick Hendrick himself about a week ago when Kyle Larson was announced around the Indy 500 that Alex Bowman will be back in the number 48 car for Hendrick Motorsports in 2025. This doesn't shock me or surprise me. Allies CEO Andrew Bremer also confirmed this as well. Alex has been doing a really good job in the playoffs so far this year with a couple top 10s early. I think Bowman deserves to stay in the number 48 car. He's done a really solid job and will likely advance to the round of 12, and he'll keep his seat going forward in the number 48 car. Joe Gibbs Racing is completely set. Hamlin will be back in the 11. Chase Briscoe, of course, taking over from Art Truex Jr. in the 19. Christopher Bell is in the 20. And, of course, the other driver, that being Ty Gibbs, will be in the 54. There happens to talk about switching from the 54 to 18, but will be number 54 once again. Let's now talk about 2311 Racing. Now, 2311 Racing is very interesting. Let's begin by talking about Bubba Wallace. Despite what we all kind of thought, Bubba Wallace is still not signed for the 2025 season. Now, Bubba Wallace most likely will be back with 2311 Racing for the 2025 season, but the one thing holding it up currently at the moment is the charter agreement. We don't know what 2311 is going to do. Denny Hamel did confirm this week to multiple media members that he's not sure at this point what the future holds for 2311 Racing. Now, once 2311 Racing does sign the charter agreement, I do expect that Bubba Wallace will get signed back at the organization. Bubba's done a really good job with 23XI Racing this year. He's already tied up for his record of most top 5s and most top 10s he's ever had in a season. He should be back over at the team once again in 2025 if they sign the contract extension. Moving on to 23XI again, they are expected to be a 3-car team next year. While they haven't signed the charter agreement, like I mentioned, according to what Bob has reported, they've been already building up for next year. It sounds like if they do expand to a 3-car operation for 2025, they will likely end up picking up Riley Herbst for that 3rd seat. Riley Herbst's been heavily linked to this seat for the 2025 season as Riley has monster backing, and the Terrace Bulls group is helping buy up this charter for next year. And while Riley's kind of struggled the points in Xfinity, he's also had some good runs. Of course, he won Indy not too long ago, and Denny Hamlin basically tweeted out, impressive after he won the Xfinity Series race, beating Eric Almirola and Cole Custer that day. I expect Riley to get this 3rd seat for 2025. Moving over to the Ford camp, let's talk about Zane Smith. Now, it was indicated about a week or so ago that Front Row Motorsports is expected to expand to a 3-car operation next year, where I know Noah Grayson's going over there and Todd Gillen signed a multi-year extension. Now, they are the other organization that did not sign the charter agreement for 2025. However, they are expected to eventually sign the charter agreement, and once they do sign the charter agreement, Zane Smith is expected to be the 3rd driver. There have been some conversation about him not going to the seat for 2025, but a lot of that was coming from Kevin Harvick, who has drivers from his agency that are not signed for next year. So we do expect that Zane Smith is going to end up getting the seat for the 2025 season. Moving over to Spire Motorsports, we know that Corey LaJoie is not expected to return to Spire Motorsports in 2025. Who's the replacement going to be? There was talk about Kyle Busch at one point, but he'll be back at RCR. It's going to be Justin Haley. Justin Haley's been linked to Spire Motorsports for the last couple of months. He was at one point rumored to go to Hendrick Motorsports. Speaking of Hendrick, they really like him over there, but I don't see him going to 48 for sure. I think Justin Haley is going to get this seat for 2025. We know Ronnie Charles wants to work with Justin Haley in a pretty big way. I expect Justin Haley to get this seat in 2025. So what does this mean for Corey LaJoie? Well, it sounds like Corey LaJoie most likely will drive the 51 car for Rick Ware Racing next year. There was talk about him going to McAnally Hogan Racing for the 2025 season in the Truck Series, but it sounds like Corey LaJoie is going to end up staying in the Cup Series next year with Rick Ware Racing for 2025. Staying in the Chevrolet camp, Kaulig Racing, we'll talk about them here in just a little bit with the Ty Norris news, but Ty Dillon is expected to get the 2nd seat for Kaulig next year with Daniel Hemrick not returning to the team in 2025. We know that RSR and Kaulig Racing are kind of talking about merging at this point, but the One Welcome group, they're going to have a really big technical alliance going next year, working together. We do think Ty Dillon is going to get this 2nd seat for 2025 and leave Daniel Hemrick behind. And finally, let's talk about Harrison Burton. With Josh Berry taking a 21 car, Harrison Burton is looking for a ride. He had said he had talked to some Cup Series teams a few weeks ago, but we do think that Harrison Burton will probably be back in Xfinity with maybe some select starts with Rick Ware Racing. The rest of the silly season is going to be very interesting as things continue to change and play out as time progresses and goes on, and we'll see what happens with the rest of the silly season for 2025 as the rides are expected to be finalized most likely by the end of this month or next month. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Ty Norris. As it was shockingly reported by Jordan Bianchi from The Athletic earlier today that Ty Norris has left Trackhouse Racing amicably and is expected to join Kaulig Racing in 2025, though it's not been officially confirmed at this point. And it was also confirmed by Joseph Strigley from TobyChristie.com, and even Bob Poxel has reported in the last couple of hours that he is no longer working as the CBO, the Chief of Business Operations for Trackhouse Racing. Ty Norris has been with Trackhouse Racing since they opened and formed up back in 2020 and joined really as a competition officer over there early in 2021. This is certainly shocking considering Trackhouse Racing in a really big way is kind of the remnants of DEI because of that one font especially. This is certainly shocking because Ty Norris has been there from the get-go. But also, as we talk about with Kaulig Racing going forward, This is really huge for Colin Racing if he's going over there. We know that Chris Rice has kind of talked about this in the past, where they basically said they were making some really big competition hirings and making some massive and huge hirings over there. And Ty Norris being your hiring is really, really huge. Ty Norris has been a major reason why Trackhouse Racing has had a lot of success over the course of the last couple of years and why they've had a lot of viral moments as well. Ross is saying in the 3 seasons so far, Trackhouse has picked up 4 victories. Dale Suarez has picked up 2 victories so far with the 99 car. And also we've seen Shane Van Gisbergen get the win in his debut at the Chicago Street Course. Now, if you're also asking, what do I think this means for Trackhouse Racing going forward? I'm not worried about Trackhouse Racing going into the future. They're probably going to be hiring some people over there going forward. And I do think, especially with the loss of Ty, it is going to suck for the team at least a little bit. Considering they're going to be a 3-car team next year with Shane Van Gisbergen being the driver of that 3rd seat with the number 88 cars. They have acquired a 3rd charter from Supercars Racing. I think losing Ty Norris is really, really huge and a major detriment for the team at least short after. But I don't expect this team to lose a ton of performance. As for Ty Norris going over to Colleague Racing, if it is true, this is very, very huge for Colleague Racing. It is no secret that Colleague Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series, they have struggled this year. SVG did almost win in the 16 car for Colleague, but we have to be reminded that that 16 car, while is a Colleague car, it was prepared by Trackhouse Racing. Look what happened to AJ in the 13 car. They had engine issues. And for most of the year so far, the 16 and the 31 car have really, really struggled outside of the road courses with AJ. They have been one of the slowest organizations on the racetrack on a consistent basis. We know they're making some big hirings over there in that group. We talked about a second ago with Colleague and RCR forming a much tighter technical alliance together. And having Ty Norris come over there to help your program is huge. He was a big reason why DEI really grew to where they were for a few years before unfortunately the fall kind of started in 2005 after a really strong 2004 season. He helped get Michael Waltrip Racing up on their feet and really grow that program before unfortunately being kind of part of that debacle in 2013 and left the organization was suspended indefinitely. It's really awesome to see that they're going to get a pickup from him. Chris Rice expected to talk about this later today. I think this is really, really huge for Trackhouse. A huge loss for Trackhouse for sure. And one of the most shocking, silly season moves I think we've seen so far this year. Because when you think of Trackhouse, you think of Ty Norris coming back into the limelight and being the man who really helped get this program up to stuff. He's a big reason why Daniel Suarez is over there, why Pitbull's over there, and why some of the big things. He was a big reason why they ended up buying Chip Ganassi Racing's Cup Series operation, and why they brought Ross Chastain to the team, and why they're looking to maybe bring Zane Smith into the organization. I think this is really, really sad to see that Ty Norris is going to be part of Trackhouse Racing going forward, but it's not a bad decision, all things considered. Again, I don't expect Trackhouse Racing to be affected. In fact, I think their program is only going to get better next year. I think Shane Van Gisbergen likely makes the playoffs. I think if Ross Chastain doesn't get involved in crashes and incidents, I certainly do expect him that he's probably going to end up making the playoffs as well. And Daniel Suarez's performance recently has been getting a lot better. So I do think Trackhouse will have a bounce-back season in 2025. It's definitely very shocking for sure to see a move like this, and it sucks to see a move like this, especially for Trackhouse Racing's future. But at the same token and same time, I'm not really worried about Trackhouse Racing going forward. I just wonder what exactly the next big move and plan is for Trackhouse. And my big question is, who are they going to be hiring? There's some big people that are on the market. Richard Boswell is not announced currently at the moment for a team. There's some people from Supercars Racing that haven't announced at the moment, and Greg Zipadelli is another name that's also not signed, even though he's been linked to RCR. It's going to be very interesting to see. Maybe they're going to be bringing that guy in, Mark Lasbury, who signed with that Avenue Sports Fund Group. I wonder if that had a big role to play with that. That could certainly be a possibility for sure. But when I think of this move, it's definitely very shocking and surprising to see that Ty Norris will no longer be working with Trackhouse. And it sucks, and it's kind of sad to see he won't be working with Trackhouse going into the future, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about RFK Racing. Now, if you were on social media earlier today, you probably saw this post from Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski put out a tweet saying, and teasing announcements saying that there are a lot of job openings opening up at RFK Racing. Now, usually when it comes to job openings at organizations, we don't really talk about this kind of stuff. But why is this significant? Well, there's a lot of talk and chatter currently at the moment that RFK Racing is expected to expand to a 3-car operation for 2025. Now, why is this going to happen? Well, a big reason for that is Kroger. Kroger has a big affiliation with an organization called JTG Daugherty Racing. Now, early in the silly season, it was reported that Kroger was likely going to be leaving JTG to go over to Joe Gibbs Racing for 2025. However, in the last month or so, it changed. Back around the Daytona week or a couple weeks prior to that, right at the beginning of the time when we came back from the break, it was reported by Adam Stern that Kroger was expected to head over to RFK Racing for 2025. Kroger joining RFK is absolutely huge because that is going to be more money for the RFK Racing Group going into the future, especially if they want to be a 3-car team. Now, what will the number likely be they use? Could they use a 60 car? The stage 60 car as a number? That could certainly be a possibility and a shout for 2025. They could also use a number 97. We all thought that Trackhouse Racing was going to be using the number 97 for Shane Van Gisbergen and Cup, considering SVG's had that 97 number for most of his racing career. But I think the 88 is also a great choice, and the 97's had a lot of history of Roush for many years. I think about Kurt Busch being in that car, and I think about drivers like Chad Little, who got a shot and opportunity in that seat as well. So that number they could certainly use. Now, who's the driver going to be behind the wheel of this third seat? Could it be Zane Smith? Could it be Harrison Burton? No. The driver, like you saw at the beginning of the video, is Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece has been heavily linked to this third RFK car for the 2025 season. Now, why is he favorite for this seat? Well, because of his past work with Kroger. Kroger worked with JTG Daugherty Racing back in the 2020 year. Basically, he was over there from 2019 to 2021. And a lot of people over at the Kroger brand really like Ryan Preece. And something noted by Jordan Bianchi this past week. Apparently, RFK Racing, people that have talked to Jordan Bianchi, stated that they really don't think that Ryan Preece has really gotten a fair shake. I know some will disagree, but I actually do agree with Jordan Bianchi on this. I don't think that Ryan Preece has really gotten a fair shake in the NASCAR Cup Series. The two teams he's driven for are JTG Daugherty Racing and Stewart-Haas Racing. JTG Daugherty Racing has never been an elite organization. Sure, they made the playoffs in 2014 with AJ Allmendinger, and last year was really the first year where they collectively ran up front and were inside the top 16 in points for the whole entire season. But outside of that, they have really struggled. In his last year in that number 37 car that he ran, it was an uncharted car, and he lost his seat because of that at the end of the year when he downsized to a 1-car operation, because running a car that's an open charter is not feasible in the NASCAR Cup Series anymore. And then you talk about Stewart-Haas Racing. He joined Stewart-Haas Racing at a really bad time when they were beginning to go into a sinking ship. They've been struggling a lot. And unfortunately, he joined a very bad team. This is the first year where SHR had not won a race. Now, so far this year in 2024, they did win with Chase Briscoe at the Southern 500. But for the most part, even in a down year, they haven't been running great. Now, Ryan has been the worst performing SHR driver so far this year, but he's not been as bad as some people make him out to be. And he's also working with a certain person named Chad Johnson, who really isn't the greatest crew chief out there. Remember, the Brickyard runner Tony Stewart had Chad as the crew chief in 2015, and he wasn't that great, helping Tony Stewart basically lose the race quintessentially. Now, the other big thing to think about is I think Ryan Preece is a very talented race car driver. And we've seen what he can do in the lower series. He had a shot to win with Joe Gibbs Racing, and he got 2 wins with JGR. He also, of course, got some wins in the lower series, in the truck series, with what Tricon used to be called David Gillen Racing. I think that he is a very talented driver, and given the right opportunity, I think he could absolutely make the most out of it. And I do think he is going to make the most out of it. I think that if Ryan Preece goes there, well, I do think he'll probably be the third of the 3 drivers at RFK Racing. I certainly think that next year is going to be the best year of Ryan Preece's career up to this point. I've seen what Ryan Preece can do when he's been in top tier and really good equipment. And I do think that he deserves a chance and opportunity to be in the best equipment that he possibly can be in. Now, the other big question we have to ask, where is his third charter coming from? Some have thought maybe the Stewart-Haas Racing fire sale. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. I don't think it's coming from Stewart-Haas Racing. I think it's coming from Rick Ware. We know Rick Ware and RFK Racing have a really tight technical alliance. That's why Justin Elliott at one point was linked over to RFK for this year to drive his third car. But then everything changed, of course. And I do think that when you look at this move, it would make a lot of sense, especially getting it from the Rick Ware Racing organization. So I do expect that this charter most likely is going to come from Rick Ware going into 2025, and I do expect that this is going to be good for them overall. Now, the 15 car for Rick Ware is likely going to be an open car for 2025. That's most likely is what is going to end up happening, by the way. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. As for Ryan Preece getting this chance and opportunity, he's earned, in my opinion. He's a very talented race car driver who can get the best out of equipment if given the right chance, the right shot, and the right opportunity. So I really hope this ends up happening where he does go over there. It sounds like it's very likely at this point, and I do think that if Ryan Preece does go there, he's absolutely earned the right to get behind the wheel of this seat, in my honest opinion. So, that is good for today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support on Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. Do you think Ryan Preece is going to RFK? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Ty Norris leaving Trackhouse Racing? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today on the channel, we'll have the Xfinity Series race picks for this weekend at Bristol. Tomorrow, we're going to have the NASCAR Cup Series race picks for Bristol. We're also going to have the paint scheme video, and we're also going to have the Truck Series race review. Then Friday, we're having a NASCAR news video dropping, and we also have some other content dropping, including the Xfinity race review. An SVG video is going to be coming out on Friday night as well. And then on Saturday and Sunday, we'll have content surrounding Bristol. And then on Sunday, most likely, we'll have an updated 2025 NASCAR silly season predictions dropping. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.